All right. Woohoo! The scream inside your heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Ooh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Ty Adams. Welcome to TRA Marketplace 2020. For today's session, we are glad to have you with us for Scream Inside Your Heart, Restaurants and Third-Party Delivery. Exciting, exciting. Without further ado and delay, I would like to have our Big Ben stage sponsor video from Texas Mutual.
In response to the pandemic, Texas Mutual will distribute $330 million in dividends to eligible policyholders 2 months ahead of schedule. We're also sending $2 million to nonprofits on the front lines of the COVID-19 effort. Better days are coming, but in the meantime, we'll be on the job helping Texas businesses. To learn how dividends are supporting employers in this time of need, go to texasmutual.com/dividends.
Awesome. Huge thank you to Texas Mutual. Awesome state sponsor. As well as before we dive into our moderator, before I bring her on and do the formal introduction, please feel free, if you have any questions, to leave them in our Q&A window at the bottom, and we will be sure to get to them either through or after the moderation is complete. But just know we're looking forward to hearing from you, so engage with us. Without further delay, this session is going to kick off. I want to introduce our moderator, Ms. Kristen Hawley.
Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Kristen Hawley. Thank you so much to the Texas Restaurant Association for having me today, especially to talk about third-party delivery, which is my absolute favorite thing to talk about. I have a slide deck, so I'm going to just quickly share my screen, and we will get started. Okay. Great. So here's a picture of the restaurant, the restaurants of yore. I think we're obviously not enjoying them in this way. I think we all miss them desperately. I know that I do. But that is one of the reasons that we decided to title this session Scream Inside Your Heart, Restaurants and Third-Party Delivery, knowing that it is a very challenging time for the restaurant industry, and that third-party delivery is terrifying to navigate on a good day, and even more terrifying to navigate in the middle of a pandemic when it becomes so critical to restaurant operations. So about me, my name is Kristen. I am a freelance writer about the restaurant industry for places like Eater and Food and Wine and Business Insider. I have formerly run a B2B restaurant industry website, and I am very, very interested in restaurant technology and have been for some time. I also have a weekly newsletter called Expedite that I will put a subscribe link at the end of this presentation. It's free. You can pay for it if you choose, but it is also free. And I'm happy to distribute it for free. It's weekly, and it's about kind of what's going on in restaurant tech, of which third-party delivery is probably the biggest part. And I will say too, I don't categorize third-party delivery as good or bad. I think that it has its place. I think it's really important. And I think that restaurants get a lot of value out of it. So here is a kind of a state of third-party, where things are headed, how I think about it, what I'm thinking about in the future. And I don't have 45 minutes worth of content, so please do ask questions, and I'll get to as many as I can at the end. So here to start is an example of the kind of third-party press that I see. I live in San Francisco. This is from my local Eater site. And this is a bar in Oakland that is serving food to stay afloat during the pandemic, that has seen a deluge of third-party delivery drivers and phone calls and all kinds of issues even though it hasn't signed up for any of this. I'm sure that this is a common thing. I've heard stories about this all across the country. This story and others like it are super indicative of kind of what's going on right now, unfortunately. How did we get here? So I think it's important to remember that the largest third-party food delivery companies that we talk about, with the exception of Grubhub, are really young. Postmates launched in 2011, DoorDash launched in 2013, Uber Eats launched in 2014, so Uber is a little bit older. And one of the ways that these companies grew was to not sign up restaurants like Grubhub did at the time. It was to offer delivery from literally anywhere. And their couriers would place an order and get them. You didn't have to sign a contract. That wasn't necessarily the way that you had to work with these companies. And it's still not the way that a lot of them are working, that all of them are working really. You don't have to be a partner. This is something that is obviously a little bit controversial, but it's also the way that these companies grew literally overnight. They were working with a lot of unpartnered restaurants. Grubhub started, they announced that they were going to grow this way, and their external facing communications team even explained that they had to work with non-partnered restaurants, is what they call them, in order to grow, which causes problems like a bunch of drivers lined up at a bar that never did delivery, that's doing delivery to stay alive, and kind of flood them with orders that they didn't want or didn't think they wanted, and then companies can use them as a sales pitch. Okay, next slide. Large delivery companies make up 98% of the food delivery business. This chart is from a couple months ago in April. It's 98%, and that is Postmates, Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash, which owns Caviar. There is a similar graph that you can find that this graph is by transactions. This is the percentage of the transactions that each company handles. There is also a similar graph that shows the share of spend. It looks almost exactly the same. DoorDash is the undisputed leader in the country at the moment. And I suspect, I'm not positive, I suspect this looked like this. This graph looked pretty similar before COVID hit, because it's just showing the percentage of business that each of the companies is doing. But when COVID did hit, companies knew very quickly that it was going to be a tailwind for their business. So here's what happened next. They started to aggressively market themselves. And then very quickly, cities and municipalities caught on to the expense that restaurants had to incur to work with these companies. And so cities like San Francisco, where I live, and all across the country, Philadelphia, imposed caps on what these companies could charge to restaurants. And these companies were not happy about it, even as they were cutting fees to diners to promote restaurants, to encourage orders. They wanted to continue to charge the 30% commissions to their restaurant partners. As you can imagine, they have continued to fight back, and they send emails and they tell people that their service will be affected if restaurants only pay 15%. A lot of these orders are temporary and they're attached to the emergency orders with COVID. Some I suspect will become permanent. San Francisco in particular had a measure in the works that would have limited these permanently before COVID even hit. So it's something that could happen in the long term. And it's something that these companies certainly don't want to happen in the long term. So what's happening, big delivery? This is where I talk about what's just happened in the last couple of months. So Grubhub was acquired by a company called Just Eat Takeaway for $7.3 billion, or it will be acquired. Just Eat Takeaway is a European company. One of the reasons that Just Eat Takeaway won the race to buy Grubhub was because of regulatory concerns in the United States. There was a very public negotiation going on with Uber and Grubhub, and details were leaking all over the Wall Street Journal about pricing and what they were going to do. And towards the end of that, there was a lot of concern from elected officials about regulation and how big Uber would be if it eclipsed Grubhub. So they just looked to a different country for a new parent. But Grubhub's doing great because more restaurants signed up to be Grubhub partners in the first half of this year than all of 2019. That's information that they just shared with investors at the close of the second quarter. Not to be outdone, Postmates was acquired by Uber for $2.65 billion in stock recently. It was seen as sort of a consolation prize, and I guess it was if you consider the market share. It was expected. Uber CEO has been very clear that he wants to grow market share and he wants to win, and that he is not interested in being in a market where Uber is not in the number 1 or number 2 position. Uber's also doing great. So, well, Uber Eats. Uber Eats is currently bigger than Uber's rideshare business right now, today, because of COVID. It has grown in leaps and bounds. Both the amount spent on delivery and delivery revenue essentially doubled year over year in the second quarter, which is huge. One important note, though, I will say that 55% of Uber Eats business is outside of the US, so they are a true global company, but they're still going after the United States market, their hometown. DoorDash is not on this slide for no reason other than they're not a public company, and so they are not beholden to the same disclosure schedule. They're able to share with us what they want to share with us. They are worth $16 billion. They just took a $400 million investment, and they're expected to be a publicly traded company soon. So, like, basically, these companies poised to grow, want to grow, their investors want them to grow, the market wants them to grow, they are incentivized to grow. Here's how they think about it. Grubhub CEO believes that the pandemic was not only a tailwind, it actually bumped up their Grubhub business kind of onto a new level that's going to continue thanks to consumer changes in behavior. That quote is just, yeah. Similarly, Dara Khosrowshahi, Uber's CEO, says the COVID crisis has moved food delivery from a luxury to a utility. And as we add more use cases, our service will move from a utility to a daily need. That was recently. Uber says that they want to increase their take rate, which is the amount that it's not the amount they charge restaurants, it's the amount they get from every order after all is said and done, paying the driver. They want it to be 15%. That's really high. I've heard that number is higher internally, they're targeting. So Uber is very clear that they're looking to make more money on each delivery. And that is something that they've promised to their investors on their path to profitability. And one more important note, Dara, Uber's CEO, came to Uber several years ago from Expedia, which the online travel agency industry is often compared to the food delivery industry in the way that it works with small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses, and aggregates their offerings in an online marketplace. So he knows what he's doing, he knows what he's talking about. So here we are today. I ask questions for a living as a journalist. And so here are the questions that I've been asking myself about big delivery and that I think will continue to inform the future as they grow. Are we stuck? The short answer to this question is yes. We're stuck with these companies and we're stuck with their size and we're stuck with how they operate. The longer answer is that it depends on a lot of factors and that there are lots of other options. They may not have the size and scope of an Uber Eats or a DoorDash, but there are other ways to offer delivery. There is a product called DoorDash Drive, which allows a business, and you may be familiar with these, but DoorDash Drive allows a business to accept orders through its own channels, however you want, website, third party, bento box, any way, and use DoorDash's delivery fleet to deliver orders. There is Tock. Tock to Go got a lot of attention. It launched very quickly after the pandemic began in March in the US. And it is a way for restaurants to accept online orders and then have them delivered via DoorDash for a flat rate that is paid completely by the consumer, not by the restaurant. And that was a big deal, I think, when that happened. Tock is seeing huge growth in customers, and its CEO, Nick Kokonis, is a restaurateur and very vocal about protecting restaurants from third-party delivery. It's also much, much smaller in scope, and you lose the marketing that's inherently associated with big apps. There is ChowNow, which was another early winner in the pandemic. In the early days, it also allows restaurants to accept orders directly into its own system for a flat fee per month, not a order rate. And the ChowNow CEO told me in May that about 70% of restaurants that use ChowNow to accept orders offer delivery, so it's pretty common. And I love this one. ChowBus is a delivery app for Asian restaurants specifically. So it focuses on just Asian cuisine. It has great penetration in major Chinatowns, and they just took $33 million in funding with 3,000 restaurants in over 20 cities. Similarly, there's Slice for pizza. So there are options. Again, obviously, they don't have the market share that the four giant companies have, but there's other ways to offer delivery, especially as you're thinking about building a long-term strategy, given that we're going to be where we are, it looks like, for some time. More good questions about consumers, and I suspect that restaurant operators can answer these questions more than I can, but I want to think that consumers will soon be willing to pay more for delivery if they understand what it costs a business. I don't have proof of that. I've heard anecdotally both ways. I really, really, really want to believe that the consumer education that's coming out of the popularity of big delivery apps is going to help them understand that it costs a lot more than they think to be able to have the convenience of eating restaurant food at home. More good questions. Are consumers willing to trade the convenience of third-party apps for ordering via a restaurant's preferred method? I've heard stories, I've continued to hear stories for the past 6 months about restaurants leaving notes in boxes of food to ask their customers to please leave Grubhub and order directly. I've heard stories of customers telling restaurants that Grubhub just offers too good of a deal, then they want to order through the third party. They're conditioned to the convenience of the phone. Again, since we're talking now about building forward a long-term strategy, I think consumer education is important. Understanding that they want to support their restaurants is important, and restaurants understanding that they can tell their consumers and their customers and their guests how they can best support. I want to believe that that people will listen, and I'm super interested in any stories of success in that area. Regulation is a big area of interest for me because there is so much attention. I mentioned that there were fee caps that happened in some cities, and that more are looking to do that. Restaurants are actively fighting against it. In California, there's a big employment issue happening right now you might have heard of called Assembly Bill 5. It's a law that these companies have chosen not to follow right now and spent hundreds of millions of dollars to fight. It's supposed to mean that Uber drivers and DoorDash couriers must be classified as employees, not contractors. This is just a California thing for now. However, it's very possible that something like this could even go nationwide. Interestingly, in Europe, Just Eat, which is brand new parent company of Grubhub, announced that it was transitioning all of its couriers from a contractor model to an employee model in Europe. There's talk of testing this in Canada. There is no talk of testing this in the US. I suspect it would be far off, but wouldn't it be wild if Grubhub decided to make its drivers employees? Also in California, California inspired because I live here, will government imposed restrictions limit how large third parties can work with restaurants? There is a proposed bill that would prohibit third-party delivery companies from listing restaurants that do not expressly partner with those companies on their apps. So that would eliminate the problem from the first slide. You wouldn't be allowed to work with any company, you, Grubhub, you, DoorDash, wouldn't be allowed to work with any restaurant business that did not explicitly sign up for your service. That's just a proposal. It's not a law. It is moving forward. And it's something that I'm definitely keeping an eye on, obviously in California, but that could eventually affect the way that these companies work. Contracts. I have very little visibility into contracts, unfortunately, because I'm not allowed to see them. I know that you're not allowed to share them with me. I know you're not allowed to share them with each other. That's just their nature. It's also become clear that not all of the contracts are equal, and that large enterprise companies, sometimes all the time, get favorable terms when they partner with these businesses. They know that delivery companies need them to survive. One example that I like to talk about is the no price competition clause in the contract, which means that you can't charge more on Grubhub than you would charge someone who called your restaurant. That is something I think it's been enforced unevenly, but it is in the contract. It's in the contracts of all of the major companies, I guess, unless you are Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Chipotle, or any other large company that has no problem publicly sharing that you're increasing your prices on delivery apps to offset their cost to you. Again, I don't know if it's going to be enforced. I have no visibility on exactly how these companies are going to approach this kind of thing, but I have to guess that if a small restaurant group or independent restaurant started publicizing the fact that it was charging more on DoorDash for the same thing, DoorDash would be pretty pissed. I don't know if they got mad at Chipotle. Maybe they did. And then growth in the future. I think the biggest thing is, how big are these companies going to get? Will they keep getting bigger? Probably. They want to. I think it's important to remind you that these companies, third-party delivery companies, don't make money. They still don't make money. They're still running at a deficit. Even if your DoorDash worth $16 billion, you're still not making money, which is crazy. They're young, they're growing. That's how they justify the loss. Uber's CEO has promised a profitable 2021 across the company, and that's tied largely to growth, customer growth and retention. So they spend a lot of money to get people, and then they try as hard as possible to keep them. One way that they're doing that is subscription services. You've probably heard of DashPass. There's now an Uber Pass that includes rides and eats for a flat fee per month. Postmates does this as well. That's a really easy way to get loyal customers, to charge them a monthly fee, to offer free delivery, greatly reduced delivery, rides, whatever you can to sort of keep them in the ecosystem. The Uber Pass, I think, includes grocery. DoorDash just announced a new grocery product. The DashPass will include grocery as well. How will they continue to compete? I think they'll compete on price. They'll compete on restaurant availability. They will compete on how much it costs, like the time. I think speed is a big thing. 30 minutes is the standard for these companies. They're always trying to get faster. I think one of them put out a press release when they cut like 2 minutes off their delivery time or something crazy. So they will continue to do that. I think that it'll be very interesting to see when the Grubhub deal closes in 2021 and the Postmates deal closes in 2021, what that will mean, because both of those companies will be much larger and they'll be able to compete better on price and compete to retain drivers and talent and the best restaurants in order to provide value to their customers that they want to hold on to so they can finally start making money. Basically, it's all in the name of growth. So that is my presentation. This is who I am. If you are interested in my newsletter, you can subscribe on those links. If you're interested in reaching me directly, you can email me. And I am very happy to take some questions. Let me see if I can do it from here.
I see a few in the Q&A if you didn't already.
Amazing. I'm going to stop screen sharing.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Of all of the big delivery companies, do you anticipate another merger in the next 6 months? Probably not. I don't know. I mean, they're already, there's DoorDash, there's Uber, and there's Grubhub. So I think it's possible that they could buy a smaller one. I think that's always possible. That's, Uber loves to buy small companies and expand that way. Grubhub has employed that strategy. I don't think Uber is going to buy DoorDash. I think DoorDash is going to IPO. But yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of cutthroat right now, and they want to get bigger. Let's see. Are any of these delivery companies actually in the black? No. Do you think as they grow, they would have an obligation to give back dividends to participate in restaurant companies? I mean, I think that would be nice. I think that listening to the way that the leadership discusses their business, I don't think that they necessarily respect the restaurants that build their companies and that sustain their business as much as they should. So, like, do they have an obligation? Do I believe they do to their small businesses that support them? Yes. Do I think they will? Maybe. I think it's more likely that they'll just kind of veil those price breaks as like deals, like 1 month free, or like, we'll kick you $1,000 to run a promotion or something. But do I think that restaurant partners are going to share in Uber's ultimate success? Not small ones. I don't see that happening. I would love to be proved wrong. How can restaurants most effectively take back market share from third parties in order to retain margin? Loyalty, rewards, better app experiences. I think there are so many vendors and providers that offer loyalty and rewards that are perhaps now even offering ordering. I think that it's hard. I think you might do well to put more energy toward your own communicating with your own customers directly versus letting the third parties run your marketing essentially for you. I've talked to restaurants that have had great success by literally putting notes in their bags that say, please order from us directly next time. Here's a coupon if you can. Just having that conversation, I think that consumer education is really important. I think when people understand what it costs a restaurant to give you that service and what it costs them to work with a third-party partner, people are really surprised, especially now when they want to support local restaurants. Is it possible to compete for consumers if we run our own delivery? I'm not sure I understand. I guess maybe the question is if you get off of a third party and just do it on your own. I mean, it's certainly possible. I think that the thing that you will lose is the marketing that happens when someone picks up their phone and says, I don't know what I want. And they scroll and they see and they're like, oh yeah, great. I want tacos. This place has tacos. I've never heard of it. They're close to me. They say they can deliver in 20 minutes. That's their promise. That's their value. That's what they charge you 30 to 40% for. But I think that offering a good service, on your own. It's certainly possible. It's challenging, and it takes time, and it takes money, and it adds a more marketing expenses to your bottom line. I think it's great. I love when restaurants do it, and I always personally try to tell everybody to go directly to the restaurant when they can.
Mhm.
I think that's everything. I hope that everyone found this useful. I can talk about this all day, but you know, like I said, they're not evil, they're not terrible, they're not great. I think it's important to find the ways that you can work with third-party delivery that work for your business. And if it's not working, don't do it. It's just not worth it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christian. We really enjoyed you today. And for everyone who was able to jump onto the session, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for supporting and joining all of our sessions for TRA Marketplace 2020. Please join us this evening, as well as tomorrow is our last day, and we will have some amazing sessions starting tomorrow morning. Please log in to TRA Marketplace 2020. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.